Welcome to the Mojo for Musicians podcast from Manny Cabo Media, where we dig deep into today's top strategies to help you take your music career to the next level with real, raw, and uplifting conversations with industry professionals that are making moves, making a difference, and making the best versions of themselves to inspire you to do the same. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Manny Cabo, and welcome to another episode of Mojo for Musicians. All right, guys, welcome back to another fun and value-filled episode of Mojo for Musicians. And I may be a little biased with this episode by telling you it's going to be one of my favorites, probably because I'm a singer. You know, at least I think I am. I mean, I could hold a note on occasion. But yeah, this episode will discuss the many tries and tribulations that we singers and hosts and essentially anyone who uses their voice as a means of entertainment and, more importantly, income encounter from time to time. And my guest today literally wrote the book and best-selling book, I might add, on his science-based approach to developing a strong, healthy, and balanced instrument for any style of singing. And what I love most about Rich and his techniques and his whole philosophy, which is this: anyone who can speak can sing. Let me say that again. Anyone who can speak can sing. And yes, it's true. So for all of you out there who are scared and doubtful or even intimidated by the whole idea that you can't sing or be as good as this person or that person or the ever so popular, I can never hit those notes. Guess what? You are all wrong. Because I've been there, and I too embrace the whole doubt. But, and this is a big but, I just said big but, my passion to succeed took precedence. And people thought I was insane at 45, competing with 18 and 20-year-olds, not to mention 50,000 other contestants, until the world saw me nail that highly coveted 4-chair turn on NBC's The Voice. And then again, 3 years later on La Voz in another language, no less. So yes, people, it's all nonsense. And your only obstacles getting in the way of your vocal ambitions are your own limiting beliefs that you've fabricated over the years. You want to be a good or even great singer? It's simple. Dude, work your ass off. Master your craft and proper technique and commitment. You got to stay healthy. You got to rest your voice when needed and believe in your talent. Because if you don't, then who the hell else will? So yeah, I'm excited to have him on the show today. And if you're a singer, you don't want to miss this one. Trust me. So without getting into the intricacies of the anatomy of the voice, I just want to talk about the basic structure of how the voice works and share from my own experiences how my own regimen and passion as a podcast host, speaker, and of course performer has taxed my voice on multiple occasions. Actually, more times than I'd like to admit. And the simple adjustments that I made that we can all make when those moments arise. So let's talk about how the voice works, because understanding the basic principles and breaking down the functionality of the voice that so many of my vocal coaches explained over the years made a huge and positive impact on my career, because I was able to diagnose my own issues while I was singing, whether it was rehearsals or vocal classes. And I was able to remedy the situation with simple solutions like, rest, vocalizing properly, and more water, which, by the way, if you commit to focusing more on incorporating just these 3 elements more consistently in your regimen, the results are priceless, because believe me, they've saved my ass on tour, on TV, you name it. So how the voice works, to me anyway, is pretty damn fascinating, because there are so many working parts that just harmoniously come together when certain parts are triggered, and they create what we call sound. And that sound is caused by a vibration in your vocal folds that are just 2 bands of muscle tissue that are positioned opposite one another in the larynx. So when you're not speaking, the folds essentially are open, so you can breathe. And when you're singing or speaking, the air passes through them, causing them to vibrate, causing sound.
And the cool thing is that the quality of your voice, which are things like pitch and tone and volume, are all determined by the size and shape of our folds, which is why there are so many different and unique voices out there. So, what I'd like to do now is just talk about the things that most, if not all singers, want to know the answers to. So, I'll go over the two most important questions that so many vocal coaches are asked continually. And I'll have Rich tackle them at length later in the show. So, the first obvious question is this: how do you know when your voice is not healthy? And you may think that this is a common sense thing, but so many vocalists aren't aware of the science, which is half the battle in preventing and, more importantly, treating the issue. For example, has your voice recently become a little hoarse or even raspy? Does your voice sound like it got a little deeper? Or do you find yourself constantly feeling like you're clearing your throat? Another popular one, which is a little more obvious, is are you battling more to hit those high notes without any type of strain or cracking? And if you answered yes to any of these questions, then you need to either A, consult a vocal coach if you don't already have one, and take your career seriously. See an ENT specialist anyway. And if you don't know what that is, it's an ear, nose, and throat doctor before you do any further damage to the rest of your voice immediately. You know, it's funny. So many singers have their special teas and potions and lozenges and a multitude of rituals to tackle voice issues, when the reality of it all is plenty of room temperature water and vocal rest are the two most effective treatments. And that's not just coming from me. I've had the honor of working with vocal coaches responsible for the success of, oh my God, well over 25 Grammy and Emmy award-winning artists. So believe me, it's not a hoax or a coincidence, and Rich will definitely tell you the same. The second biggest question that follows is always, well, what causes voice problems? And the degree of severity can vary, from respiratory infections, from the common cold or flu. This one's the popular one, vocal misuse, which we discussed earlier. And many artists, including celebrities, have developed growths on their vocal folds, otherwise known as nodes. And you do not want to get nodes, trust me. And I know many personal friends of mine that have undergone successful surgeries because of it. But the one that seems to be the most prevalent in all of us, including myself, is the psychological induced trauma, where you worry so damn much about, not being able to perform that you literally psych yourself out and either become sick or hinder your abilities altogether to perform. And I know because I worried so much about a performance one time that I forgot the lyrics. And if that wasn't enough, I caught a sinus infection, and I never get sinus infections from, all that unnecessary stress. And it usually happens at the worst time, usually before you perform, of course. So, guys, the mind is a very powerful tool, and it's been scientifically proven to create energy and emotion that can make or break your central nervous system. Causing great manifestations or conversely erode every organ in your system. So my advice is breathe, okay, meditate, practice, do your homework, because the more you prepare, the less stress you're going to be and the better your performance will be. I guarantee you that. There is not one vocal coach that has ever told me, well, you could just wing it. Definitely not. The more you prepare, the more you prepare, the more you prepare, the better your performance would be. So when we return, we've got Richard Fink IV in the house. So stick around. We'll be right back because, like I said, this one's going to be a real fun one for you singers.
You're listening to the Mojo for Musicians podcast. To learn more about becoming a guest on the show to share your mojo with us, visit mannycabo.com and send us an email in the contact section. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you like what you hear, be sure to give us a positive review on your favorite listening platform. And now, back to the show.
All right, man. The moment of truth is finally here because on the other end of this line, I've got the first and only person in history to receive a U.S. patent for a vocal technique. He's a best-selling author in self-education and the world's leading online vocal coach by the Wall Street Journal. And if that weren't enough, he's a three-time Guinness World Record holder. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, the one and only Richard Fink IV. How are you, Rich? And welcome to the show, my friend.
I am excellent. Thank you, Manny. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Dude, I would not want to be Richard Fink V because that's a lot of bravado to back up, man.
Yeah, my wife and I kind of scratched that one off the list really fast.
I can't blame you on that one, man. Dude, it's so good to have you on the show. And it's certainly been a minute. I remember, let's see what, the last time we worked together was back in Rochester. I was photographing one of your artists for THROGA record, Lillian, right? Lillian Beeler.
Yes.
Great artist, man. How time flies.
Oh, yeah. It goes fast, especially with the world as it is. It's a weird time capsule all the way around.
Yeah, let's not even get into that. That's a totally different episode, man. So, I know personally, because I'm always keeping up with you, you have some amazing new developments with your THROGA vocal gym online course, and I'm excited for you, man. And I myself have some questions for you.
Sure.
From my listeners that I know you're going to love to answer. And I know it's not the first time you've been presented with these, but I'm beyond humble, me personally, and honored that it's you responding to them because I know this is your passion. And like me, you move and love to see positive results.
Absolutely.
So thank you for joining us today, man. It means the world to me and my listeners.
Happy to.
Yeah, man. So listen, like all my guests, I always make it a point to honor and be considerate of your time. So I'm going to jump right into this with question number one. So what are the top 3 things that every singer should implement immediately? And I don't care what stage of the game you're in, just overall to enhance your total vocal experience.
That's a loaded question, right? Because
it is.
3 things, every one thing is a rabbit hole of, that we can really dive into. But,
sure.
Just kind of stepping back and looking at the big picture, because I know with your podcast, you're coming at things from a lot of different angles in terms of artistic growth and development and all that. I think one of the main things that singers need to be aware of is that their voice is always with them. They take their instrument for granted all the time. It's not like a guitar that you see in the corner of the room, like, oh yeah, I gotta change the strings, or I gotta practice my scales, or a keyboard in front of you that you can feel. It doesn't have the same tactile, tangible feedback. So just being aware that your instrument is hardwired into who you are is a really big deal. That awareness it creates a domino effect in terms of the choices you make throughout the day. So that's step one, is your voice is always with you. Don't take it for granted. It's much easier said than done.
So just be aware.
It's huge. It's huge. The other thing is tied to that actually is to realize in that awareness that not only is your instrument always with you, but it's at the center of everything you're doing. If you're a singer, the time you spend songwriting and marketing and building your social media and figuring out your attire and getting the next gig and all those things are very important from the business side of things and to the artist development. And they're all key. But at the very center of that is your voice. So if you don't have that in a reliable or sustainable or predictable way, if your instrument isn't in tune, so to speak, then all those other pieces start to fade away. They start to crumble because they all come back to the consistency of what you can do with your skills. And then again, tied to that is your vocal health, being able to rely on that. So I don't know if that's 3. They're all kind of jumbled into one big umbrella.
No, I mean, it's great because it's true. I mean, what's the point in worrying about attire, worry about the next show if you have no voice? So, I mean, that's at the top of the list. I get it. I completely get it. And I know where you're coming from on that one. I've been there.
So I would say it's so easy to get wrapped up in the truthfully, the excitement, when things get rolling, that consumes your mind and the perception of other people on you. And I totally get that. It's just, again, it comes back to it's easy to just overlook.
Yeah. No, and that's a great segue for question number 2, actually, because I know that you cover the 7 dimensions of singing. which I love, man. I can't talk enough about it. And I wish I could do a longer session, but, I want to keep it to a minimum because you and I could sit here and have heartfelt dialogue for like 20 hours on this stuff. But in your opinion, let's just say because of the pandemic, and this is kind of directed for me too, so I'm milking this one for me as well, because I know tons of singers have this one. And as many vocalists, like I said, can empathize with this one. I personally haven't truly performed at least a solid 2 to 3 hour set in a couple of months, say, especially,
Sure.
since my dad passed. And I have a show in a week, hypothetically speaking. And I want to maximize the full spectrum of my voice within that time frame. What would be your go-to technique or regimen if you could actually select one per se?
Well, it's hard to say a show 1 week away, and it being a show that's as significant as a 2 or 3 hour set, right? Because that's a marathon. So there's a lot of risk with that. So to have strength and stability in your voice takes time to build up. So there's no magic wand or band-aid that's going to guarantee stability of your voice in such a short period of time. So I want to kind of start with that first, right?
And that's why I ask you, because I know everyone's always looking for that magic bullet, but I know, and I'm being the devil's advocate here because I want people to understand that, it's not going to happen overnight, but there are certain things to at least gradually get to the level, So yeah, go ahead.
For sure. I always like to preface the shortcuts with the reality check, right?
And I'm good with that because we all need that sometimes.
Absolutely. So some of the key things that you can implement right away in terms of preparation for something coming up, like you say, you've got a lot of strength and stability in your voice. You've been singing for decades, and you know what to do on stage. You have a sense of automation. Using you as an example.
Well, at least I think I do most of the time.
You do, absolutely. So the thing is that when there's a moment building up, it's really easy to what I would say over or under rehearse for that situation. If you haven't been singing for a long time, then all of a sudden, like, I got a show in a week. I'm going to start, I'm going to rehearse every day leading up to the show. That's a wild risk right there, because you can fatigue yourself. The folds swell from friction and heat, just like any other, anatomical part of your body. That repetition can be fatiguing. So you have to be strategic with where you're at and what your goal is. So if you've been performing regularly, then you might only need 1 or 2 rehearsals and you get a little rest time in between. You can still vocalize every day, of course. I'm not saying you have to be silent, but you don't want to do a full 2-hour rehearsal for that performance day after day after day leading into that, or you can end up on that day in trouble. That you hear all the time, especially when Manny, when you and I were younger, starting out with singing, it's the day of the audition you're sick. It's the day of that big gig your voice is given. It's always that.
No, man, you know what? And not to interject, I preface this show with that. It's a huge psychological factor, and it's plagued me because you got my phone calls at 11 o'clock at night. I don't know what I did, Rich. I think I feel sick. I think I made myself sick. So I have to agree with that. Sure.
Absolutely. So some of it is what you just said, stress, right? So it's that there's an anxiety simply just because you care about that next performance or that next gig. So some of that is stress in your muscles, again, because you're hardwired to your mind here. It's not like the guitar where you can separate yourself. They are getting the signals from your brain that something's up. And so they tend to tense a little bit longer and they stress out with you. So some of it is stress and some of it is that over preparation or lack of sleep, all kind of tied into the same thing. And so it's not a coincidence that you're sick the day of the show, because it's what led to that moment. The biggest issue, and this is something you and I talked about, Manny, is that it's because you care so much about your performance. The stress of caring usually causes more problems than just whatever the sickness is to begin with.
That's just incredible, isn't it? It just doesn't make any sense, but it makes perfect sense at the same time.
It really does. The panic is a big factor in terms of the maintenance of your voice. And it stems from a positive place. You care. You want to do good.
No, man, I remember as if it were yesterday, getting on while I was on La Voz, and I call you up. I'm like, Rich, man, I've got an issue. My throat feels tight, and you're like, well, have you rested? Not really. Have you drank enough water? Kind of. He's like, well, first of all, you're like, hang up the phone, do that first, and then let's continue
Call
this
me back
conversation.
tomorrow.
So yeah, and
No, but
go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, you're right on, and tying right into that, as far as like preparation leading up to something, sleep is a big deal,
Yeah.
right? And you're an active, high energy guy, so it's like vocal rest for a personality like yours is vital too. You can still be awake and alert, but giving yourself the opportunity to actually rest, and more importantly, sleep. The sleep cycles are vital because your vocal folds are actually flushed out on a cellular level that allows them to heal and regenerate and recoup. So it's actually part of your vocal training is quality sleep. It's not such a bad gig when you look at it that way.
No, it's not. And it's so simple. You would think it would be, a commonplace and common sense, but obviously common sense is not common practice among singers because we think we're warriors. And you're like, no, I got this. Because living in Nashville kind of spoils you. You get some artists out there that are doing marathons 4 or 5 days in a row, singing 3-4 hours a night. I'm like, that's insane. And they're like, well, listen, I got to make a living. But then again, if you get sick or if you injure yourself, then you're really not going to make a living because you're not going to get booked because you sound terrible. And
That's
not
right.
to mention, you're going to keep damaging your voice, and
so it's not about those 2 or 3 hours on stage.
Right.
It's about the 21 to 22 hours around that time.
I agree.
What are you doing with your instrument then? I get asked all the time, oh, is my technique good? And so it's usually there's room for improvement. That's what the 7 dimensions of singing is all about. Isolating certain muscular aspects of your instrument and fine tuning them and improving your skills. And that's great. But no matter what your technique is, no matter how off balance it might be in this moment, it's what are you doing off stage? Because if that is in check, if you're getting enough sleep, if you're hydrating, if you got a good diet, if you're, basic exercise activity and you're doing some basic vocal warm-ups and such, if you're doing those things daily, you can be a boxer on stage for 2 hours. You can take the hits, right? Not that that's ideal, but that is a scenario you can do well with if you're taking care of your instrument around those moments.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Muhammad Ali as a boxer, now that you've alluded to that, he said, I hated training, but then I realized if I don't train now, then you know what, I'm going to get hurt in the ring, and I'd rather, suffer now than I'll have an easier life later on. And it's so true. It's these little things like drinking water.
Yeah, and taking that analogy one step further, if you're worried, imagine Muhammad concerned about getting hit. If you're worried about getting hit, you're going to get a beat down, right?
I know.
The same thing. So if you're panicking about, if I can, can I get that high note? Can I remember that lyric? Can I, is my equipment working? Any of that stuff. If that's stressing you out, you're going in there tense and you will take a beating. So you set yourself up.
No, you're putting that negative energy. It's true. You're putting that negative energy out there because there have been situations where I know the song inside out. And then I'm like, wait a second, did I remember this? And you start doubting yourself and then you're getting in your own way and everything just falls apart. It really
all
does.
About presence and being in the moment. And in that case, when you're on stage, it's no longer about, did I get enough sleep? That time has passed. It's do I know the lyrics? That time has passed.
Right.
In this moment, the skills that you have, the condition you're in, your entire focus should only be telling a story. What is the lyric asking of you? What are you conveying? What is your emotional intent? And if you focus on that, it'll keep you present and allow you to pull on all those subconscious skills that you've built up over time as a singer. And that's what you're looking for.
So the one thing I want everyone to take away from this, and again, only coming from personal experience and under your guidance, is preparation is key, whether it's maintenance, whether it's learning your lyrics, whether just be responsible in doing the things you're supposed to, because when it comes time to just killing it on stage, you have no concerns whatsoever and you could focus on the performance. Absolutely, man. I agree with you 100%. And so now let's move on to question number 3. And this is a 2-part question. And usually my favorite to ask, which is, and this is, I'm going to get a little personal here. So what's your biggest challenge as a singer and how do you overcome it? And the second is, If you had the opportunity to travel back in time, like what would you tell the 20-year-old Rich to focus on, or to tighten, or to get better for his overall singing experience and his future?
I would, first of all, I would tell myself the same thing I tell you.
Mm.
Right? It's that, and that's why I wrote a book. That's why I have the vocal gym. All those ideas that I've created are from a life experience of challenges.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'd love to sum this up in one sentence. I think what I would tell myself is simply put is to enjoy the process.
That's a big one.
Because if you're so hung up on the next goal, right? If you're not enjoying the journey, if it's just I gotta get that gig, I have to make this much money, I gotta get a Grammy, I gotta write the best song. Those are great motivational tools, but if you're obsessed with that carrot in front of you, then you are not going to actually enjoy the process, which is why we got into the arts in the first place.
Right. No, it's a valid point. Absolutely.
And I've lost a lot of years, if you add those moments up, of opportunity to enjoy my voice and probably connect that much more with my audience and grow in the process.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I started meditating, just to stay more present, man, because it's true, especially our West mentality is to, hurry up. What's the next goal? What's the next adventure that we're going on? And we forget to really enjoy what we're doing at the moment. And one thing, and losing my dad that really heightened my senses into really appreciating every second, aside from even being on stage, interviewing you, doing the things that I love, but just to be alive and being able to breathe and really focus on the now, man. It's
absolutely.
it's a
and
big
it's
deal.
such a shift. And again, my condolences. I know we talked about that earlier.
I appreciate it. It's been tough, but you know what? Talking to people like you and keeping me engrossed in my arts, and that's one thing I know he would have wanted. So I want to make sure that anyone else who's going through these issues and challenges does it right. They have the opportunity to tackle it now. Don't wait till like you're 40 or 50, to hold, world records and writing a book. Do it now and you're 20, and then do something else.
Absolutely. And you know what? That authenticity of being in the moment, the success is a byproduct of that on some level, right?
Yeah.
So whether it is getting, on the top 10 charts, or winning a contest, or getting that break in audition, whatever that's all byproduct opportunities that are really unpredictable. But if you stay present in developing who you are and working on all those other aspects that you talk about in your podcast, that wholesome, authentic you is going to be developed in such a way that will be, first of all, it's undeniably unique, because you're the only one on the planet that has ever been or ever will be again. And then a developed version of that becomes something that is undeniable, that people will remember.
Sure.
But they won't remember you unless you trigger an emotion. You have to get them to feel something. And that stems from you allowing yourself to be vulnerable in that growth, coming back to the awareness, coming back to enjoying the process. People see that in others, and it's just wildly attractive. And that's how you get fans. That's how you get the networking to get where you want to go.
Yeah, no, it's definitely predicated upon that, because I've realized, and again, from my own experiences, is that when you don't worry about the end result and you do it with your passion, you just basically put your best foot forward. And at the end of the day, say, dude, I did everything I possibly could. I did it right. I upheld my responsibilities. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And most cases, correct me if I'm wrong, most cases it'll happen because you're not concerned with it happening.
Yeah, it's literally a natural byproduct, and usually slightly unpredictable, in the sense that it's similar to what your goal was, but true opportunities aren't planned, right?
Yeah.
They kind of knock on your door in unexpected moments, and that's why, going back to what we started with, is you have to have the condition and the skill set in your voice, because you don't know when that opportunity is going to be there, and you have to be able to answer that call in a way that is productive and predictable in terms of skill. And that comes down to that vocal practice and vocal maintenance, for sure.
Sure. So prepare, be ready, because when you're ready, in most cases it'll happen, and you don't want to be You don't want to be shocked or surprised or miss the opportunity.
I've had a
100%.
lot of students in that scenario where they get that call, they get that audition, they get that opportunity, and because they weren't ready for it, they have to bow out or they get overlooked,
Right.
right? Because their voice didn't respond the way the other person expected.
Exactly. And the most talented people, they take that for granted, and then they end up getting caught with their pants down because, I should have just tweaked this. I had all the time in the world. And listen, I'm a culprit, man. I've done it. You get lazy. You get a couple of accolades here and there. Your ego gets in the way. I'm like, I'll be all right. And then come showtime, you're like, oh, man, all I needed was like an hour or two to go over this. And preparation is key once again.
Always look out for the ones that work the hardest.
Absolutely.
Like if you have an innate skill, if you have a natural skill set, if you will, or inkling towards any type of art, whether it's dancing, singing, playing piano, whatever, if you have that and just default into that mode, the ones that want it more, that work harder, will always get the gig over you.
Oh, yeah.
But if you have the inkling and you have the work ethic, that's when you've got something really special.
Yeah, no, I say that all the time. I'd rather work with somebody who's got all the passion in the world and the talent. I mean, you can't teach passion. You could teach skill if somebody wants to, uphold the
100%.
responsibility, but you can't teach that heart, man. Again,
Absolutely.
I got to agree with you. So I'm going to pose this last question. It's obviously the show's trademark question, which is,
Sure.
what's your mojo, bro? Like, what keeps you motivated to educate singers and continue developing vocal rock stars, man?
It was an unexpected love. I started out, singing, songwriting, being on the stage. That was my passion. Then it kind of slowly shifted to the background. I ended up falling in love with the idea of sharing that knowledge and seeing it, seed and blossom in others. And that became a really just rewarding process there. So it's kind of an organic process over time that I wasn't expected. I was backstage, opening for other singers, and they were asking me, what am I doing in my warm up? How am I getting that note or whatever? And that just kind of organically turned into something. I think my mojo is, I don't know if it's my father's influence, really strong work ethic. And some of that could be just nurtured there. It could be a genetic disposition. But the biggest thing is I enjoy following my bliss. If I'm doing something I love, for whatever reason that is, however we can pick that apart, I'm doing something I enjoy, and that is an internal self-afflicting drive that keeps me moving forward.
I guess that, one of the reasons, and I think the biggest thing that I enjoy about shows like this that I'm creating is I like to pick out guests that kind of share in the same type of ideology that I have, people that are passionate. Because for me, like you, and I get where you're coming from, my passion to help out other musicians by bringing on these incredible guests with experience is somewhat of a altruistic and gratifying experience, especially just to hear and see that light bulb go off in people like, oh, really? That's all I had to do. Now I get it. And you were a part of that, now you're
Very
part of their
rewarding.
growth
Yeah.
process, it just feels good, man.
Without taking credit. It's such a special moment, like you said, to witness that in somebody else, but it's not because of you. You just get to be an audience of that moment, and it is very special.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. Listen, how do people find you, bro? I know we're at the end of the show. You've given us so much. I mean, there's like chock full of stuff that I can't wait to go back and just listen to this and just take some more notes because, you kind of overlook certain things. You're like, oh my God, I forgot to do that. That's right. Rich is going to kill me if I remember to do that. But how do people find you?
I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you down the road, somewhere in this podcast, in the sea of amazing people you're connecting with.
Yeah.
Get me back on here and let's do some vocalizing together. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Dude, that would be amazing. Yeah, people would love to hear that.
Specific exercises would be great.
I think that's brilliant. That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah. But yeah, they can, anyone can get hold of me at THROGA.com. It's THROGA.com. And you can check out what we've got there and contact me directly as well.
Yeah, and your book, I got to tell you, I can't endorse it any more than I already have. Like, The 7 Dimensions of Singing has really got my ass out of some serious difficult times vocally, and I'm not doing it. I'm not saying it because you're on the show. You're not paying me. I fully uphold everything you have to say in that book because it's so intuitive. I think it's really important for a singer to understand how the throat works as well. You know, how the larynx work, how the vocal folds work, where are they located, because that actually helped me understand the things I was doing wrong, you know, looking upward and stretching and doing this wrong and not intaking enough air. It's the little things that start making more sense when you understand the anatomy of how your throat works. It's pretty awesome.
Understanding the why behind learning anything, I find to be essential.
I agree.
So I love that you enjoy that process as well.
I did, man, and everyone else will. So check out my friend Richard Fink. Bro, I can't thank you enough. I appreciate you granting me this time to talk to my listeners and to refresh some great conversations that we had in the past, man. You've been amazing. So thank you, and I'm grateful for your time again.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you real soon.
You got it.
Take care.
This has been a Mojo for Musicians podcast. If you're a musician, producer, engineer, or any other industry professional wanting to share your mojo and stories of success with our listeners, or just want to share some feedback on today's episode, we'd love to hear from you. So just send us an email at info@mannycabo.com. Thanks for listening.